New International Webster's Comprehensive Dictionary describes labor as physical or mental exertion, particularly for some useful or desired end, toil, work. The working class collectively dealing with the welfare of wage earners, especially in regard to wages, working conditions and opportunities for employment to do work, toil and strive to accomplish a work or purpose. The question then is, has unionism promoted national development? Has unionism been selfish to the detriment of the national ethos? As workers celebrate Labour Day today, these and more questions will be put forward to our guest comrade Ken Ofoma. Labour unions and national development will be our conversation this time. And comrade is standing by right here in the studio. Good evening, Comrade Ken.
Good evening. My pleasure to be here.
And the very first question will be, how much contribution does the labor union, labor unions contribute to national development?
Okay, they are very, very valuable. They have made useful contribution in various aspects of our national life, or in the national life of any nation for that matter. In terms of economic development, or the economic well-being of both individuals and the nation, because the labor unions agitate for enhanced welfare for members, and by so doing, the labor unions are invariably helping for wealth redistribution, to redistribute the wealth, so that from one end to other ends, and by so doing they are contributing to increased economic activities. As well, the labor unions also help in the cause of social justice. Social justice in the sense that they agitate for the rights of the working class. They also agitate against other social injustice, not beyond the rights of the workers. Of course, they also help to champion national causes for the well-being of the generality of the populace, not just workers. And also, the labor unions play the role of holding government accountable also. And that is why sometimes the populace, they look forward to the labor unions to intervene, to query certain policies of the government. Also, the labor unions help to shape government policies and programs. They contribute to debate, healthy debate, intellectual debate about how policies can affect the people, whether economic policy, whether health policy, whether environmental policy, whether it is in the area of transportation and what have you. The labor union also help to train the workforce, because they organize training for members, and by so doing, they are indirectly contributing to national development, because the knowledge, the skills the people will acquire during the training will also be used to enhance their productivity. So they help to increase the productivity of the nation through such training of members. So it's a very, very crucial and veritable organization in the development of the nation. Without the labor unions, it could even lead to maybe anarchy in some cases, particularly because by organizing themselves as unions, they help to serve as a bridge between the workforce and government or organizations. And they also champion the cause of collective bargaining. Without such organized negotiation or organized body, if workers at every time they are unhappy or they don't like any particular policy and they want to take up arms or go into protest without organized leadership, of course it will lead to crisis, national crisis, organizational crisis, to affect national productivity. So these are the areas the labor unions help in national development. Very crucial.
Now, more than once, you mentioned agitation. Other than jaw, we also now know that the unions are huge on protests and strikes. And so, looking at even the recent past, we have seen where some persons called out the unions, the organized labor force, not to embark on strikes because that could add to the economic crunch that we're already experiencing. And so I'm asking to find out if in trying to agitate for some harsh situations, especially when it concerns workers' welfare, does it not appear as if the unions are selfish, even to the detriment of the national ethos they are making efforts to protect?
No, they are not. They are not. First of all, their main objective, number one objective, is to protect the interests of their members in terms of having healthy working conditions.
In so doing, does it not look like it's oppressive to the nation?
I don't think that is one.
Okay.
Then, beyond that, seeking for the welfare of their members, enhanced remunerations, better wages, better salaries, and what have you. They also help to shape government policies. And they also help to galvanize the populace against adverse government policies. Because some of those adverse government policies will invariably affect not only the workers, but also even the populace who don't belong to any particular union. For instance, when the federal government wanted to, or rather removed the subsidy on petroleum products, what the economic impact was felt by not just workers alone, but also other members of the society. And so the workers, because what it will eat up their disposable income, it will trigger inflation, and of course it will lead to continuous agitation of for wage increase. And so by doing so, they are also agitating for the interests of the masses, not just, and most of the time even the masses look forward to the labor unions to lead such agitations, because this is the only well-organized body. For instance, the Nigerian Labour Congress, one of the biggest labor center and the second Labour Center, the TUC, Trade Union Congress. Nigerian Labour Congress has about 45 or thereabout affiliates, whereas the TUC has about 17 or so affiliates. And they both constitute the largest workforce. Their members cut across virtually every discipline, every sector of the society, including government workers and non-government workers. And so when there is a policy that is adverse, that will affect the masses, the people look forward to NLC for such agitation. And I can tell you why that allegation or accusation of being selfish sometimes crop up is because it's not easy, really, to be at the forefront for such agitations. You know, they face a lot of pressure, the leadership. They face a lot of threats. And in case of military rule, they face incarceration, arrests, torture, detention. Just like the media, the press also face. Sometimes even extrajudicial killing. So in playing that role, you have to be careful. And also for government in power, not to see, well, the first allegation is always that, oh, the Labour people are being used by opposition.
That
and that will deflect government tries to put a lie to deflect the origin, whatever the objective of agitation is. So the Labour finds it difficult, or finds itself in a difficult situation. But I can tell you that when you have a committed leadership in the Labour, they continue to explain to the people, they continue to keep their eyes on the ball and try to educate the people. And they have very many educated people. And of course, the training they organize for their members make them very much at tune with economic and political developments. Sometimes they even come up with alternative policies. If you remember when the university system came up with EPs, IPPIS, or not the educational system actually, it was the federal government policy, but they included the educational system without taking cognizance of their peculiarities, you know. And the Nigerian university system, the members of ASU, Academic Staff Union of Universities, came up with the alternative, you know, what they call UTAS, you know, that will take care of their peculiarities. But it was difficult for government to even agree that they subjected the one they produced to test, and eventually came up with yes, and decided to exclude the university system from that IPPIS. So these are some of the alternative choices. And sometimes when government wants to, I remember when government under the military regime of former military president Ibrahim Babangida, when he wanted to introduce a structural adjustment program, they were saying, oh, that is the only thing that will save Nigeria's economy by devaluing our currency and what have you. The labor unions, including students' union, Nigerian Association of Students, University Students, they organized that called SAP riot that year. And they were also coming up with alternative. But of course, the military had their way. And many people believe that that structural adjustment program was the beginning of our economic quagmire in this country. Because that was when our Naira was devalued, and it continued on that downward trend. And so they are not selfish. They help to agitate. They take part in even in democratic championing democratic causes. If you remember when the June 12th, when the election result was annulled, the same by IBB under his regime. Labor unions also took part. Remember Kukuri, who was the then president of Nupeng, and other labor leaders participated to help to restore democracy, and the agitations helped the military to come up with a transition program that saw the another round of elections.
The one that was eventually annulled?
It was annulled, but they agitated. It led to June 12th protests, led to other organizations, formation of groups like NADECO and what have you. And, you know, the point is that without such organized labor, even the Nigerian Bar Association, they also, without their participation or even leading such agitations, many governments or administrations would have turned to totalitarian administration or totalitarian government. But because that is where the aspect where they help in holding government to account, because every government is always eager or are conscious of the fact that certain policies will be fought by the labor unions. So because of that, they tend to have a second look before they come up with certain policies.
I know you are a unionist, and so I don't know how frank you can be with this. Are you saying that never in the history of 44 years of labor unionism in Nigeria, that there's never been a time where in advocating for workers' rights and welfare, the unions did not exhibit the potential to undermine the interests of the broader national concerns, such as job creation, economic growth? Are you saying that such a thing has never happened? It doesn't have to be recent.
No, I can't remember. The truth of the matter is that if you are a labor leader and you deviate from what you are expected to do by your members, that is the quickest way of you being removed or you not being able to go for second term, because and that is also one way of making you unpopular. Most of our early labor leaders, we talk about Pa Michael Imodu, Pascal Bafiao, and before later people like Adam Soshomole. You know, they became national figures because of their role in championing the cause of not just the labor people, but also the masses. And so they became what they became, national heroes or national icons, because they were able to maintain those principles. Even during the agitation for independence, a lot of labor leaders also contributed in the agitation for independence, Nigeria's independence, just like the media. And so, of course, maybe in some affiliates, some leaders, over time, you may not have the same quality of leadership, just like in every other aspect of our national life, even in politics. The kind of politicians we have today, you cannot compare them to the First Republic or the Second Republic politicians. In those days, they are men of value. When they form a political party, they hardly move from one party to another. They have principles, they have morality. I remember in Second Republic when Abubakar Rimi was governor of Kano State. When he had issue with the leader of the party, PRP, the People's Redemption Party, Malam Aminu Kano. So he wanted to leave PRP, but he resigned. He said, "I can't go with your position. You sponsored my being governor." He resigned as governor and joined NPP the Nigerian People's Party, formed by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, that is principle.
It sounded like it didn't happen in this country.
It happened in this country. But today, you see people, a governor with defect, with members of the House of Assembly, even when that of House of Assembly is expressly provided in the Constitution that if there is no division in the party and you leave, that you should leave your seat, you should vacate your seat. But they no longer, so that is, they tell you that leadership can evolve over time, and you cannot have the same quality. So the Labour leadership is not immune to such denudation, of value. But I can tell you that the current leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress, led by Joe Ajero, and that of TUC, led by Festus Osifo, I can tell you that they are giving a good account of themselves, because it's not easy. Sometimes it is even more difficult to operate under civilian regime. I'm telling you, because most people don't know. If we work under the military, you already know that there is a military dictatorship. So the battle is already defined. But when you are working under civilian rule, they use all manner of tactics. They use the courts, they use the judiciary, they use even the security system to oppress you, to intimidate you, and to bend you. And sometimes people will say, oh, they have collected money. No. Okay, in the olden days, in the days of the year, the days of Pascal Bafiao, the days of Michael Imodu, would anybody conceive that the leader, president of the NLC, could be beaten? But Joe Ajero was beaten in Imo, or
his own state.
His own state. I mean, it couldn't happen you can't even think about that. So that will tell you the kind of environment we operate these days, and that is why it's part of the message of the NLC on this anniversary about shrinking public space in terms of civil liberties and rights of the people. Like the thing is shrinking, and they are agitating or advocating that there should be more room for people to exercise their rights, democratic rights and civil rights, and what have you.
Okay, when you mentioned non-government workers as part of the workforce in Nigeria, the group that first came to mind was the artisans. How much of their interest is protected in the trade unionism in Nigeria? When the only time that the organized labor actually agitate is when the let's say government workers are directly involved, especially in the remuneration, workers' rights, wages. How about the artisans?
The labor leaders agitate for the whole, both labor members and non-members. I can give you a few examples. Even in recent time, when the communication companies wanted to increase the communication tariff, or even when the distribution companies wanted to also, they always, because they know that when you increase such tariff, it will affect the income of average worker. It will also affect the income of the artisan. So,
indirectly.
Directly and indirectly. So when they are agitating for the interest of workers, they are invariably also agitating for the interest of the artisan who cannot organize themselves. They don't have people to speak for them. The only opportunity they have is to take to the street at the trigger, and that is even also part of the responsibilities of the labor leaders or the labor unions, because they tend to articulate the collective interests and desires of members of the society, and because they believe in them, that they will agitate for that, so that they queue behind them. But sometimes you also look at the people. Increasingly, the masses are also becoming nonchalant. You don't always expect the labor leaders to, be the one fighting. Sometimes you also need to give them the support. I know when they called national strike, and most affiliates, even the general public, they were going about their business. But I remember in the olden days, when NLC and TUC declares, a national strike, even non-members, drivers, everybody, marketers, traders, we join.
Would you say that the nonchalance is as a result of lack of confidence in the leadership of the various labor unions?
Partly, because of it may be rightly or wrongly, the perception that after all they will go behind and negotiate, and they will be sorted out. But like I said, it is wrong. It is not the case all the time or most of the time. But so that is the perception. But
how can you explain what actually happens?
That
if it's not settlement,
it is also no. Sometimes it is not, because in developed democracies and societies, they have a way. Even the masses outside the labor unions, they also have a way of partnering with the labor unions to sustain any cause. But here, people have grown weary. They know everybody wants to, maybe because of the level of governance and intimidation, and the total belief that nothing good will come
out of any
government
agitation,
or any agitation, that you may even die in the process and nothing will happen. So people now, even in our democratic participation, people are losing the confidence even in the electoral system. And that is why the voter turnout is decreasing every day. The last general election, I think the total is about 36% participation. So you see, it's going down because of that same, but that is very erroneous. Maybe there is need for political parties and of course the electoral body to engage more in political education and enlightenment, because if the people can realize the power they have, and sometimes they even show it inadvertently. At the same election 2023, if you look at what happened between Obi, presidential candidate of Labour Party, and Obedient Movement, you see that people's power also played a part in the Labour Party that has no structure, had no state government, to be able to get 6 million plus votes and win some state, or well, at least Abia State, win many senators, win many House of Rep, win many in Enugu, for instance. They won 2 Senate seats out of 3, and I think 6 House of Rep out of 7. Okay, later on the PDP claimed 1. So
through the courts.
Through the courts. That of Ogwaniri Ojiriva. And of course, okay, they also reclaimed, okay, they won, yeah, also won and all that. And I think, so they won.
At the State Assembly.
At the State Assembly, they had 14 members. Some of them are now decamping, which is what we are discussing. That in the olden days, such it cannot hardly happen. You see, you can hardly see people moving like that. Although the process of cross-carpeting started in the First Republic, but it was understandable then. In the Western House of Assembly, they didn't want an Igbo man to be the leader of the party in the Western region. But this time around, there is no serious reason some of them are giving other than self-preservation, enlightened self-interest. So the labor leaders are doing their best, but there is need for improvement, and there is also need for the populace to complement that effort.
Okay. You also, while you were talking about government workers, another set of people that came to mind were those who work in the multinationals. And so, with the increasing trend of globalization, is it possible for labor unions to effectively navigate the challenges caused by multinational corporations, such that may exploit loopholes in labor laws?
Of course, there is need for that, and but they cannot do it alone. This is where the federal government comes in. There are some practices by foreign companies, how they treat workers in Nigeria, that they cannot do in their own countries. So sometimes it requires the Ministry of the relevant government agencies, the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Labor and Employment, and what have you, other relevant agencies, to also help to protect the Nigerian labor force. Because sometimes the labor force, the labor they engage may not be organized labor. They just recruit Nigerians and use them as slave labor. You understand my point? They are not really organized. Those who work in organized multinationals, they are better treated than those who work in foreign companies established in Nigeria. There are such cases where particularly some, maybe there's no need mentioning countries, but some of the Asian countries, they come to Nigeria. Some of them even come in illegally and set up businesses without proper registration. You know, they don't meet the regulation. Yet they employ Nigerians and use them as slave, laborers. They don't pay them, something that is commensurate to the labor. They work overtime, no protection, workplace environment, and what have you. And like I said, sometimes they are not organized labor. But those in the organized labor, many multinational company, that is what it sorts, particularly in the oil sector, they have well-organized labor unions like Nupeng, like Pengason, those who work in the oil sector. They agitate for their rights, and they are fairly treated than those who work in the organized private sector, or rather in foreign organizations or foreign companies that work in Nigeria, but informally.
Talking about sectors, with the advent of technology, some sectors are obviously becoming obsolete. And so I don't know if there's a way that labor unions can help in reshaping industries and helping in sorting out workers as some demand for certain types of labor shrink.
These are policy alternatives that labor unions can offer. But everything depends on
leadership,
not just the leadership of the labor, but also the leadership of the country. Because, like I said, some of the labor leaders are exposed to even international conferences and exchange programs in other countries. So they see how they operate and innovations in terms of technology and safety in the workplace, even environmental protection and what have you. So when they make suggestions, and of course some of them have influenced government policies regarding, operation in some work areas and even environmental protection and what have you. So they contribute, but they are not direct policy makers. They can only suggest and lobby for such improvement or introduction of new methods and new ways of working in certain environments.
There is a growing divide between labor unions and government relations. It's not peculiar to Nigeria, other climes too. Are there strategies that can be adopted to improve social dialogue between unions, the government, the employers of labor, in order to promote cohesion in national development?
Yes, of course, increasingly there is need for that. That was why even the problem of the challenge of the national strike that followed the removal of subsidy, that was how it was resolved. The government set up a tripartite committee, and one on the government side, one the labor unions, the third one the organized private sector representatives. So such dialogue eventually it delayed, took like almost 6 months, but the matter was eventually resolved to now arrive at the current national minimum wage and all the agreements reached. It was as a result of such dialogue. But of course, one would advocate for increased dialogue that should be routine, not just when there is an issue or agitation, so that the such opportunity for proactive dialogue and rubbing of minds together to continue to champion new ways and remove gray areas that can lead to industrial disharmony in future, and to continue to also prefer alternative policies. Government always believe that they have the best experts, but I can tell you that labor leaders, even the organized private sector, they also have better ideas. And if government should listen to them, most of the borrowing we do as a government, we wouldn't have been doing it. And well, you continue to borrow. You can say, oh, it's not still up to certain percentage of the GDP, that you have room to borrow. You continue to borrow and borrow. Before you know it, you are in a debt trap. Currently, for instance, Nigeria is owing almost 145 trillion naira, debt. And we use nearly 75% of our revenue to service debt, servicing, not the capital. So you see that, but labor people and private sector, when government engage them, they can help government bring alternative policies. They can, the labor people, sometimes they may be parochial, if I use in quote. For instance, many times the private sector and the other policymakers and economic experts have suggested the privatization of certain national assets, like the NNPC, refineries and what have you. But the labor will say no, that it will affect their workers. Now you see, every year we spend trillions of naira in turnaround maintenance, yet they are not producing anything. But sometimes, some people believe that some of these labor leaders, that they are being lobbied to oppose such privatization. There are people benefiting from that turnaround, and for the country to continue to import petroleum products. But when you privatize the refineries, like they privatize the liquefied natural gas, Nigeria liquefied natural gas, that one, it's already operating at a profit. Government privatized it and gave out 51% of the shareholding to companies, private companies, and it's holding 49%. Because of that, because the private individuals have the highest shareholding, they now set up the management. Government can only nominate, and they now run it as a profitable entity. That is why LNG is making profit, and people have been advocating for such model to be adopted in the NNPC and the four refineries we have. If we have them, we won't be spending billions of naira and billions of dollars. Recently, the Warri refinery was reported to have been shut down again, less than 1 month after it was announced that it was refining. And they say they spent $820 million in the turnaround maintenance. The same thing, even we have 2 refineries in Port Harcourt. The one of them, the oldest one that was revived, they said it was operating, but they said it wasn't operating at less than 40% capacity. But if you give those refineries to individuals, they will turn it around. And that was why Dangote even set up Dangote refinery, because when President Obasanjo was leaving, he privatized the refinery. But late Yaradua came and reversed it. And it was Dangote that bought it. So when he reversed it, Dangote got angry and now started building his own. With $20 billion, he has one of the biggest refineries in the world. And it's an envy, even though the NNPC is still where they are, as a bottomless pit.
Okay, as we conclude, I don't know if you can do this in less than 1 minute. Labor unions historically focus on job security and wage increases for their members. We're looking at still being relevant in years to come in order to effectively do the advocation and the necessary agitations. Can the unions broaden their agenda to address other issues such as inequality and ensure that marginalized groups such as minorities, informal sector workers, and women are included in the benefits of national development?
I think they can do that. Maybe that is the area they may have to look into, to begin to expand their scope beyond welfare of members. Of course, to include more of social issues, like the gender and the rights of the people.
That's the way to do
right issues. They can do that.
All right, thank you very much, Comrade Ken Ofoma, for joining us on the first segment of Politicals this evening. And he is the former NUJ Vice President, Southeast Zone, and our focus was on labor unions and national development. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure.
We shall
Signature TV, news in your pocket.